It was a dull autumn morning when I received an unexpected visitor at my Baker Street lodgings. As I opened the door, I was surprised to see the great naturalist Charles Darwin standing before me. His tall, lean figure and piercing gaze commanded my attention at once, and I invited him into my study. "Mr. Holmes," he said, in his distinctively deep voice, "I fear I have a matter of great concern to bring to your attention." I could see that his usually composed countenance was marked with a furrowed brow, and I offered him a seat by the fire. "I have reason to believe that foul play may be afoot on my estate, Mr. Holmes," he continued, leaning forward in his chair. "A rare species of bird, found only on my land, has disappeared without a trace. I fear that it may have fallen prey to poachers or other malevolent forces." I listened intently to Darwin's words, for I had long admired his work in the field of natural history. It was not often that such a distinguished figure sought my assistance, and I was keen to hear more. "I am aware of your reputation as a solver of mysteries, Mr. Holmes," he said, his keen eyes fixed upon me. "I trust that you will be able to discover the truth behind this perplexing case and bring those responsible to justice." I assured him that I would do all in my power to uncover the truth, and we set about making arrangements for our journey to his estate. As I watched Darwin depart, I could not help but reflect on the strange twists and turns that fate sometimes takes. To think that a simple investigation into a missing bird could bring me into the orbit of one of the greatest minds of our age was a humbling thought indeed. And yet, as always, my mind was already racing ahead, trying to anticipate the challenges that lay ahead and the secrets that might be uncovered. With a sense of excitement and anticipation, I set about packing my bags and preparing for the journey that lay ahead. My first glimpse of Darwin's estate was a striking one indeed. As we approached, I could see that it was surrounded on all sides by dense woodland, and the trees were ablaze with the colors of autumn. We rode up the winding path that led to the main house, and I could feel the crisp breeze on my face and smell the unmistakable scent of fallen leaves. As we dismounted and made our way towards the front door, Darwin turned to me and spoke in a low voice. "I must warn you, Mr. Holmes, that this is no ordinary case," he said, his brow furrowed with concern. "The bird that has gone missing is not just any bird, but a specimen of a species that I myself discovered on this very estate. It is a unique and delicate creature, with a habitat that is finely balanced and easily disrupted." I nodded gravely, for I knew well the dangers of meddling with the natural order. The intricate web of life that existed within even the smallest ecosystem was a thing to be respected and cherished, not trifled with. As we entered the main hall of the house, I was struck by the austere elegance of its decor. The walls were adorned with portraits of Darwin's ancestors, all of them stern-faced men and women with piercing gazes. I could feel the weight of history bearing down upon me, and it was a sobering thought. Darwin led me to a study on the second floor, where we sat down to discuss the case in more detail. He told me that the bird in question was a type of woodpecker, known for its distinctive red crest and remarkable ability to adapt to its environment. He had discovered the species some years ago, and had made it his life's work to study and protect it. "Now, Mr. Holmes, let me show you where the bird's habitat is located," he said, rising from his chair and beckoning me to follow him. We made our way out of the house and into the surrounding woods, where I could hear the rustling of leaves and the distant call of birds. Darwin led me to a clearing, where I saw the remains of a once thriving ecosystem. "The bird's habitat is here, Mr. Holmes," he said, his voice heavy with regret. "As you can see, the area has been disturbed. Trees have been felled and the ground has been churned up. I fear that this may be the cause of the bird's disappearance." I knelt down to examine the ground, and my eye was immediately drawn to a set of footprints that had been left in the mud. They were large and booted, with a distinctive tread pattern that I had seen before. "Poachers," I muttered under my breath, rising to my feet. "These are the tracks of men who have no respect for the natural order. We must investigate further, Mr. Darwin." With that, we set out to canvass the surrounding area, seeking out any clues that might help us unravel the mystery of the missing bird. As we walked, I could feel the weight of Darwin's trust upon my shoulders, and I resolved to do all in my power to solve the case and bring those responsible to justice. As we continued our investigation, it became clear that the poachers had left a trail of destruction in their wake. We found several more areas where the ground had been disturbed, and we could see that traps and snares had been set up to catch any unwary creatures that happened by. "This is despicable," Darwin said, his voice filled with righteous anger. "These men have no regard for the sanctity of life." I could not help but agree with his sentiment. The delicate balance of the ecosystem was easily upset, and the actions of these poachers could have far-reaching consequences for the entire region. As we pressed on, our attention was drawn to a nearby stream. The water was murky and brown, and I could see that several dead fish had washed up on the shore. Darwin examined them closely and made a grim discovery. "These fish have been poisoned," he said, his face clouded with sadness. "The poachers must have used some kind of toxic substance to kill them. This is a tragedy, Mr. Holmes." I could feel the weight of the case bearing down upon me, and I resolved to do all in my power to bring the poachers to justice. We continued to follow the trail, seeking out any clues that might help us in our investigation. As we rounded a bend in the path, we came upon a clearing where a group of men were gathered. They were rough-looking individuals, with unkempt hair and ragged clothes. In their midst, I could see the unmistakable shape of a wooden crate. Without hesitation, we approached the group, and I could see their faces grow dark with suspicion as we drew near. "What are you doing here?" one of them demanded, his hand reaching for a weapon. "We are here to investigate reports of poaching in the area," I said, my voice ringing with authority. "And it would appear that we have stumbled upon the culprits." The men looked at us warily, but we could see that they were afraid. They knew that they had been caught in the act, and that their crimes would not go unpunished. With a steely determination, we set about dismantling their traps and freeing any creatures that had been caught. It was a difficult and dangerous task, but we were driven by a sense of justice that could not be denied. As the sun began to set, we returned to Darwin's estate, exhausted but victorious. The missing woodpecker had not been found, but we had uncovered a far greater crime. The poachers would be brought to justice, and the delicate ecosystem of the region would be protected. As I sat in my lodgings that night, I could not help but reflect on the strange twists and turns of fate. To think that a simple investigation into a missing bird could have led me to uncover such a heinous crime was a sobering thought indeed. And yet, as always, I felt a sense of satisfaction in knowing that justice had been served. With the poachers brought to justice, it seemed as though our investigation had reached its natural conclusion. And yet, as is often the case with such matters, there were still loose ends to be tied up. Darwin and I sat in his study, poring over the evidence we had collected. I could see that he was troubled, his brow furrowed in deep thought. "What is it, Mr. Darwin?" I asked. "I cannot shake the feeling that there is still more to this case," he replied. "The missing woodpecker, for one. And then there is the matter of the toxic substance that was used to poison the fish. I cannot help but wonder where it came from." I nodded thoughtfully. It was true that there were still unanswered questions, and I knew that it was up to us to find the answers. With renewed determination, we set out to continue our investigation. We spoke to local merchants and farmers, seeking any information that might help us uncover the source of the poison. And then, by chance, we stumbled upon a clue. It was a small bottle, hidden away in the back of a dusty storeroom. The label was faded and illegible, but Darwin recognized the distinctive shape of a certain type of beetle. "This is it," he said, his eyes alight with excitement. "The beetle that produces the toxin. It must have been used by the poachers to kill the fish." We studied the bottle carefully, noting the residue that still clung to the sides. With some experimentation, Darwin was able to identify the exact chemical composition of the toxin. Armed with this information, we set out to track down the source of the beetle. It was a long and arduous journey, but finally, we arrived at a remote jungle outpost. There, we found a small group of scientists, studying the beetles in question. They were surprised to see us, but welcomed us warmly and shared their knowledge freely. It soon became clear that the source of the poison was not the scientists themselves, but rather a rogue member of their team. This individual had stolen a sample of the toxin and sold it to the poachers, knowing full well the harm that it could cause. With this knowledge in hand, we returned home to London.